Hi there, I'm Woolly Wormhead and welcome to my channel. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do the alternate cable cast on for a 2x2 ribbing. It's a clever little cast on and it's not quite what you think it is. I love it. I love the alternate cable cast on family because there's lots of things that you can do with these cast ons, right? Now, this 2x2 rib cast on is based on the 1x1 rib alternate cable cast on. I have a longer tutorial for you about that, which I'll link to. That tutorial goes into the cast on in greater depth. It gives you some hints and tips to kind of help get your cast on a little bit neater, but it also gives you an idea of how the cast on is actually created. Now, if you've watched that tutorial, you might already be kind of like aware of one of the things that I'm going to explain in today's tutorial, or at least have an idea of what it might be. Because I'm not only going to show you how to do the 2x2 ribbed cast on, I'm also going to show you why the most common way that people approach trying to cast on a 2x2 ribbing doesn't work. Right? There's a little trick to the alternate cable cast on that actually helps make sure that you kind of like helps you combine it, helps you do different things with it. All right. So I'm going to kind of start on that today. I've got lots more tutorials planned for this because I love this cast on. Okay. So let me switch to the overhead. Let me get started with the alternate cable cast on and I'll show you what we're going to do. Okay, I've got my yarn, magenta DK, and my favorite carbon needles here. And I'm going to now show you how to work the 2x2 rib with the alternate cable cast on method. We start by doing a 1x1 rib. You can't dive in and cast on 2 knit stitches and 2 purl stitches. I'll show you why in a minute. So I'm going to do it the quick way with a slip knot. If you watch the other video, you'll know this isn't my preferred method, but I'm doing it for ease and speed today because we're going to do a quick recap on how to do the alternate cable cast on and then show you how you turn it into a 2x2. So this stitch, our first stitch, will become our first purl stitch. So the next stitch we do, same as with any part of the cable cast on family, always put the needle in behind the last stitch created. So we're going to put a knit stitch on there. And then for the purl stitch, we come in from behind, purl, put it on, and then again, work the knit, and then the purl. I'm not going to go into this too deep. There is a longer tutorial, and I'll link that for you. We're just having a little recap how to do this so that we know how we're going to take it from the 1x1 into a 2x2. Now you need to cast on a multiple of 4. So I'm going to aim for 12 because it's one of my favorite numbers in knit design. Let me see how many I've got. I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Exactly, look at that. So there are 12 stitches. Let me make sure they're all correct. Purl knit, purl knit, purl knit, purl knit, purl knit, purl knit. Excellent. We know we've ended with a knit stitch because the yarn is at the back. Again, that's covered it in more depth in the other tutorial. So how do we turn this into a 2x2 rib? Well, here's the thing. You can move your stitches around in a cast on. What we are actually going to do is we're going to swap some of these knits and purls over. That's it. That's what we're going to do. So where our standard kind of like pattern writing for a rib will be K1 purl 1, K1 purl 1. For a 2x2, it's K2 purl 2, K2 purl 2. Don't really want to break that rhythm because otherwise it gets messy. Sometimes we forget and lose our place. So we want to stick to the common way of doing this, the way that most patterns would be written. So we want the first stitch to be a knit stitch, which it is. So we just knit it. Then the next stitch is a purl stitch. Okay, we know it's a purl stitch. It's anchored at the back. The next stitch after it is a knit stitch. We know that is anchored at the front. So here's what we did. We swap them over. We just put our needle in there, slip that off. I mean, I am technically cabling without a needle here. All right. We knit that stitch. And then that leaves us with 2 purl stitches. I remember when I worked out how to do this, it made me feel really clever. This was like, I'm talking about 13, 15 years ago or something. I worked out, somebody asked me, said to me, how do you do a 2x2 rib in the alternate cable cast on? And I did the way that a lot of people think, which is what I'm going to show you next. And it didn't work. And then I worked it out this way and it made me feel so clever. Because it is, once you realize that you can move your stitches around in the cast on, it gives you lots of freedom. So I digress. I do apologize. Then we've got a knit stitch here, which is what we want. However, the next stitch is a purl. So insert your needle, and this is how you cable without a cable needle, by crossing your stitches. Put your needle into the knit stitch to catch it, slip the purl stitch off, and then with the other needle, grab that stitch before it goes anywhere, pop that one back on the needle and knit it. And then we purl the next two. And then we have a knit stitch left. We're on our last four, so we knit that one. We do not want that purl stitch there, so we want to take that knit stitch, drop that purl stitch off the back, and then catch it with the left hand needle, put the stitch back onto the tip, the knit stitch back onto the tip of the left hand needle, and then we knit that, and then we purl the last two. And there we have swapped our stitches around. Now, it doesn't really look like much because it hasn't got much substance to it. I've literally only worked one row. So let me just bring in this hat here. This is called the Armley Beanie, and that has got a 2x2 rib on it. Now, there is a kind of very, very slight noticeable point where you can tell that the stitches have been crossed. On the back, that's pretty neat as well. You're not going to get it perfect, perfect, perfect. But I think that's pretty close. And it looks like this is a twisted rib where the knit stitches are twisted, but not the purls. I don't make anybody twist the purl stitches because that's awkward. But there you go. That's what a 2x2 ribbing looks like. And I'm now going to bring my needles back in and show you why the common method of approaching this when people try and work it out doesn't work. Okay, I'm back with my yarn and my needles. So let's put a slip knot onto one of the needles. And let's see what happens when we try and cast on a 2x2 as you kind of think a 2x2 might be cast on. So this is the first purl stitch, which means that for a 2x2 rib, we want a multiple of 4, and it's going to end with a purl 2. So we cast on this way up, and then we knit that way. All right, remember this from the previous tutorial. If you haven't watched the other tutorial on 1x1 alternate cable cast on, please do watch it, all right? Because it'll explain all these extra bits that I'm talking about now. So if we want to cast them on as we think we're going to cast them on, this is a common mistake that people make. Then this first stitch is going to be a purl, which is a little bit awkward because there's not much there to slip knot, see, because you've had to approach it that way, but that's all right. Awkward is often the case at the beginning of cast-ons. Then you think, well, I want to cast on 2 knits and then 1 knit and then 1 purl and then 1 purl and then 1 knit and then 1 knit, and I think we've got to about 8. Right, so let me see if I can bring this up really, really close to the camera. Now, what you see there is a little bit of a mess. That knit stitch, you can tell it's a knit stitch. That purl, we know it is, but that doesn't look like a purl, and that certainly doesn't look like a knit. All right, because there were 2 purls there, then we knit 2, then we purl 2, and then we knit 2. All right, so that is all over the place. Now, it doesn't look anything like this. The reason why is, as I explained a little bit in the last video, is what makes the knit stitches and the purl stitches is the way that the yarn travels underneath the needle when we move it to switch between knits and purls. It's what creates the edge, which kind of, if you think about it, is logical because the yarn moving underneath the needle is actually going to give us our cast on edge, right? So when you cast on two knit stitches after each other, it just looks like a cable cast on. When you cast on two purl stitches after each other, it looks like a backwards purl cast on. The only time it looks like anything related to the alternate cable cast on is when you switch the yarns over to move between one style and the other. So this method doesn't work. It's a bit of a mess. Yeah, doesn't work, does it? And that's why. Because it's not the stitches that you are casting on that makes the ribbing, it's how the yarn moves underneath the needle that creates the structure of the stitches. Okay, so if you do try and do a 2x2, don't do this, do the other way. Okay, I hope that's been helpful in showing you how the 2x2 ribbing works for the alternate cable cast on method, how it doesn't work, how that common approach to thinking, I cast on two purls, cast on two knits, how that doesn't work, because the alternate cable cast on is, it's how it's created, how the knits and purls are created is by the movement between the two types of stitches. All right, how you change from a knit to a purl, because if you're casting on two knit stitches next to each other, what you're actually doing is a cable cast on. So they don't look like knit stitches, they will look like the cable cast on. If you are casting on two purl stitches next to each other, you are casting on two stitches by the backwards purl cast on method. So they will look like that. It won't look like it's changing between knits and purls. It's moving between the two different types that gives it that edge of knits and purls. Now, once you've kind of got that info cracked, and it took me a little while to work it out when people first asked, I think I first put this up on my blog around about 2011-ish. I can't remember, 12 maybe. Somebody can check the date for me. People were asking me how to do it, so I went and worked it out. And I've also then worked out how to do a 2x1 and a 1x2. I then went on to work out how to combine them, because the alternate cable cast on is built upon the cable cast on. You can combine the two together, which is really cool. But there is a little thing, special magic thing that you need to know to be able to make them work and to get your numbers correct, which, it's to do with this same mechanism of how it's created. I'll show you all that in another video. You can also cast it on mid-row or at the end of a row, because it's one of those that you can just take the stitch off and then carry on casting on. So, it's got so much to it. I love it. It's a brilliant cast on family. All right. If you would be so kind to do the like, subscribe and share thing, I would very much appreciate it. I've got so many tips and tricks I'd like to share that help get this out there, help everybody improve their knitting skills and learn a few new things. That would be fantastic if you can do that. Until next time, see ya.